It's not all bangers and mash. We've got the best of the Brits today on the Express. Consider it the full Monty.
The full Monty?
Okay, not everything in English means what you think it does. The full Monty. We got everything.
On today's show,
fashion is always about a silhouette.
Fashion historian Ivan Sayers talks fascinators in royal fashion.
Fascinator?
Green tea. Green tea.
Matthew Lucas leads the Squamish tea revolution.
The British Industrial Revolution was basically happened because of tea.
We've always been coming to Octagon Motors as kids buying parts.
Octagon Motors drives circles around 007.
This car was largely made as a racing car.
And later, it's the top hat's big comeback.
When I think of a top hat, I'm thinking class.
See that and more local expression.
Welcome to the Express, only on Shaw TV. I'm Johanna Ward. Since the fairly recent royal wedding, it seems that this side of the Commonwealth has been extra interested in all things British. So, happy birthday, Prince Charles. He was born November 14th, 1948 in Buckingham Palace. Since I think Hycroft Manor is kind of like the Buckingham Palace of Vancouver, we have donned our best dresses and our fancy hairpieces for a fascinating fashion show that's in support of a cause that affects millions of families across Canada.
Fashion is always about a silhouette and how it changes and what is the perfect body type of any given period in history. The most significant detail, the fashion feature of the 40s is shoulders.
Fashion historian Ivan Sayers puts the wow into wartime styles, especially when discussing the fashion influences of the 40s in Canada and Britain.
The Second World War is paramount. It absolutely is. Everything had to revolve around the war and trying to win it. Welding helmet, of course, and her lunchbox.
During the war, women needed to appear strong and capable, hence the broad shoulders. It was all hands on deck, in households and in factories.
Thank you very much. So restrictions in terms of how much fabric could go into things, construction, the amount of energy, labor that goes into it, all of those kinds of things.
The textile and garment industries had to supply the military, everything from parachutes to blankets to uniforms.
A lot of companies that had made frivolous dresses in the 30s were making uniforms when the war started. The waistline at its natural level, the skirt is actually what they would have referred to as a dirndl skirt.
It's not just the models that are decked out in vintage fashions at this runway show. The Ain't She Sweet event is waging a war of its own.
With the fashion show, with the 40s and 50s, it's the struggle of the times. With people with diabetes, they struggle as well, so it kind of ties in with that.
Harpal Boparai is the event chair. She's committed to helping find a cure for diabetes.
Diabetes runs in my family. My grandma passed away from it, and my mom was recently diagnosed with it. So that's where it comes from, the heart.
Yeah. It's anticipated that more than 400 million people worldwide will live with the disease by 2030, making events like this one so important. A chance to raise awareness and funds for the Canadian Diabetes Association, and also raise the fun factor for everyone involved.
The whole concept is around healthy living and whatnot. So we try to bring those vendors in, along with, pampering and beauty and fashion, and make you feel good.
This dress is going to be somewhere between 1958 and 1963.
It was also a learning experience, from World War II fashion influences to worldwide fashion icons.
I recently was looking at a book on contemporary fashion icons and who's important now. And they were interviewing a lot of the French designers and some of the New York characters and so on and so forth. The single most influential person, they said, in the world of contemporary fashion was Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. I was dumbfounded, absolutely dumbfounded. But it was a question of who they admired in the public eye.
November is Diabetes Awareness Month, and if you go to the Canadian Diabetes Association website, you can check your own risk factors and find out how you can support the cause. So, Ain't She Sweet is already planning the fundraising event for next year, and this time it will be a fashion show featuring the 60s. And oh boy, do I love the British fashions from the 60s, and the music, and the 007 movies. So we've got a little James Bond for you up next, in the version of classic cars.
Here at Octagon Motor Group, they've been fixing British cars for over 30 years. The original owner of the shop recently decided to retire, leading these four friends to go from customers to owners.
We've always been coming to Octagon Motors as kids, buying parts, keeping our cars running, and we started chatting with the old owner about what his plans were, and it just happened that he wanted to retire, and we said, well, we'll talk when you want to retire. He called us up a year and change ago and said, are you guys interested in buying the business?
Although this is a new business venture for these friends, they've known each other for years and have always loved cars.
The TD Motor? We've all known each other since we were literally 7. We all went to elementary school together, we all went to high school together, and we've always been into cars and motorcycles.
The showroom of Octagon Motor Group shows off some of the cars that belong to the customers and some that belong to the shop owners.
So Oliver, this is your car?
Yes.
And how long have you had it for, and how did you acquire it?
We got it about 2 years ago. We found it, a friend of mine found it on Denman Island in a chicken coop, and literally was covered in feathers and chicken crap. It took us about a year to take it apart, put it back together. The original engine is in there, we just repaired everything, and yeah, it's a great driving car. My wife and I have taken it to Whistler, and wow. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it.
This 1959 Berkeley SE 492 is owned by Cameron, one of the four owners of Octagon, and the car was designed mainly as a race car.
It was designed by a fellow named Laurie Bond, who was a fairly famous race car designer, and he sold the design to Berkeley, and they made about 650 of this model, which was largely for racing, and a few thousand more of all different types. Mostly three-wheelers, actually, most of them.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let's hop in and check it out on the inside.
Sure.
Yeah, it's tight.
This car was largely made as a racing car. They were sold as an inexpensive club racing car. This one has a 3-cylinder, 2-stroke motorcycle engine made by Excelsior. Most of them came with a 2-cylinder, 2-stroke motorcycle engine. This one's 500 cc's, and the non-racing versions were usually 350 cc's.
Wow. So how fast would this go then?
It claims a top speed of about 80 miles an hour. I've never had it over about 50, and it's pretty terrifying at that speed, so I wouldn't want to go much more quickly.
Octagon Motor Group fixes cars, but also has a full parts department for MG, Triumph, Austin Healey, Mini, and Jaguar. With so many of these classic cars still on the road, these four friends have many more years of working and playing together ahead.
And it's amazing how many people are keeping these cars on the road. There's old MGs, they're all over the place. So, yeah, just love doing it. It's great.
I'm Peter Verge in Vancouver for The Express.
From fancy cars to fancy clothes, fancy hats and food. You're watching our Express special on all things British.
After the break, how Matthew Lucas is creating his future in tea leaves.
Huge events in human history have been surrounded by tea.
The thing about hats is it's got to feel right.
Trending, and the top hat.
When I think of a top hat, I'm thinking class all the way.
You're watching local TV on The Express.
Community programming on Shaw has been generously sponsored in part by...
The Express is brought to you in part by Plum, fashion supplier to host Johanna Ward.